with the governor's order allowing this meeting to be held virtually, all commissioners and staff are participating by video conference from various physical locations. Members of the public, please, you can watch or listen to the meeting by any of these options. One is on your computer, https://www.townoffairfax, 2 F's in the middle, .org/watch-live. Should I spell that out, or do you good with that? Or https://cm.tv, through cable TV, Comcast Channel 27. Bear in mind, please, to those watching that channel, that we may be delayed up to approximately 2 minutes. So if you have questions, or if any timing seems off, that's what's happening. And you can also watch AT&T Channel 99 via Zoom. Meeting ID is 978-0902-0167. Or a fifth option is call in. Dial *67669-900-9128. The meeting ID for that call-in option is 978-0902-0167. And now, staff, may I please have the roll call?
Okay, Newton,
Here.
Swift,
Here.
Fragoso,
Here.
Kierline,
Here.
Gonzalez-Parber,
Here.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Chair Green.
Here. All present via video conference. I would like to add the following staff are also present: Plan Director Ben Berto and Principal Planner Linda Neal. So anybody care to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve, since I see I'm already unmuted. The agenda for the April 16, 2020 Planning Commission.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay, none opposed. So the ayes have it. So commissioners, please unmute yourselves for the vote. Always when we're taking a vote, just check your unmute, make sure it's on. And staff, where are we here? I will now read the meeting protocol. The chair shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, which I have here, in case anybody needs it. And the commission has a responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at commission meetings. The commission and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and/or ridiculing the character or motive of commission members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. Public participation is very important to the town, and we have provided a variety of ways, which I read earlier, for the public to participate in tonight's virtual meeting. Staff, could you please describe more detail how the public can submit public comments this evening? Thank you.
Okay, when the chair opens a public comment period, including open time for public comments on non-agenda items, members of the public may submit comments in one of the following ways based on their preference. 1, using the public comment form directly below the live stream meeting on the town website, www.townoffairfax.org/watchlive. 2, by emailing me at lneal@townoffairfax.org with the agenda item number in the subject line, or if your comment is for open time, please state that. Comments received by or web form prior to the close of the public comment period will be read into the record, subject to the same 3-minute time limit as in-person spoken comments. Therefore, please limit your written comment to 400 words. Comments received after the agenda item is heard but before the close of the meeting will be included as a part of the record of the meeting but will not be read aloud. Comments will be read verbatim, so please introduce yourself in the comment if you wish. 3, if you're using the Zoom web platform, please log into the meeting ahead of time, select the raise hand function during the public comment time, and you will be unmuted when it is your turn. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Or 4, if you are calling in, press *9 during the public comment time, and you will be added to the queue and unmuted when it is your turn. You will also have 3 minutes to speak. This is the first time we are using Zoom and accepting comments via email and telephone during a meeting, so please bear with us and be patient. Thank you.
We will now have what's called open time for public expression. Anyone wishing to address the commission on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the commission, must do so in one of the manners described above. Please state the matter on which you wish to speak. Matters not appearing on the commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting, but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Presentations will be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by me, the commission chair. 3 minutes. That's the established. Persons are not required to give their name or address, but it is helpful for speakers to state their name for the record and whether or not they are Fairfax residents in order that the secretary may identify them later. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on anything that is not on this agenda? If so, please submit your comments now. Remember, your comments are limited to 3 minutes or 400 words. Comments submitted in writing at this time will be read into the record up to the 3-minute time limit. As a reminder, if you're watching on the town website, submit your comment using the public comment form below the live stream. If you're on Zoom, use the raise your hand feature and staff will call on you when it is your turn to speak, although tonight we've decided to use physical hands if you happen to be on Zoom. If you telephoned in using Zoom, please press *9 and the staff will call on you in turn. Or you may also submit your comment via email at this time to lneal@townoffairfax.org.
This time, we do have 2 attendees on Zoom, and I do not see a raised hand. You do still have time if you would like to raise your hand and you're a Zoom attendant to get your comment. Thank you.
Yeah, Phil, we're about the first minute into the public comment period, so we should be catching up to the public comment period on CMTV any moment.
Sure, I'll wait a moment or two, no problem. It's like when you're on CNN, they're talking to someone on the other side of the world. It takes a minute for them to hear the commentator and respond.
Yes, this is one of the challenges. We're using a variety of digital platforms to broadcast this meeting, and there's some latency between the two platforms that we are using.
So we're about another minute in. So I don't know if, Linda, are there any written comments? You're muted.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Linda.
Hey, Linda, I have unmuted you. Go ahead.
Okay, I am seeing no questions or comments coming in.
Okay, well then, having seen no questions or comments coming in, we will close the open time for public expression and move on to the consent calendar, which there are no items this month on the consent calendar. So we'll move on to the public hearing items. The first item is 6, 8, and 10 and 12 School Street Plaza, application number 19-14. And staff, please present your report. Thank you.
Just a moment. Commissioner, I'm going to be recusing myself for a personal interest and turning the video off, but I'll listen and come back after this item.
Okay, thank you for your confirmation. Staff will now present the staff report as soon as you're ready.
Okay, so this item was continued from the October 17th, 2019, the December 19th, 2019, the February 20th, 2020, and the March 19th, 2020 Planning Commission meetings. Additional information requested by the Commission at those meetings included the following. The Commission requested more information on the rent range that will be charged for each live workspace and the approximate number of people occupying and potentially occupying each space. We have attached, attachment B is a table that includes that information, but basically the owner proposes having no more than 23 persons occupying the live workspaces. And based on the County of Marin rental affordability table for 2019 and the rents proposed by the applicant, 4 of the live workspaces would be moderately affordable, 5 would be affordable for low income tenants, and 1 would be affordable for a very low income tenant. The Commission also requests more detailed floor plans, which the applicants have provided. The housing element of the 2010-2030 Fairfax General Plan identified School Street Plaza as a potential site for affordable housing. Several commissioners have stated that they will be supportive of the project if it will result in the provision of affordable housing. Subsequent to the December Commission meeting, the town has determined that because the town has no inclusionary housing ordinance in the town code requiring affordable housing, the Commission cannot require a housing applicant to provide affordable units. But as we stated before, the applicant is providing some units that are affordable to low income and to low income tenants. One commissioner raised concern about the low percentage of working space relative to living space in some of the units, and the applicants have revised the project plans to eliminate 4 of the smaller live-work units, with the result being that the proposed 12 live-work units now all have a ratio of residential work area of 50% or almost 50%, and those percentages are also contained in attachment B. The Commission asked to see other agencies' live-work ordinances, and we provided them with regulations for the following cities: Berkeley, Calistoga, Cotati, El Cerrito, Larkspur, Mill Valley, Novato, Petaluma, San Rafael, and South San Francisco. Staff used these various ordinances to compile a detailed list of conditions of approval which have been used to ensure that the live-work spaces function symbiotically with the other permitted uses on this limited commercially zoned property. The Commission requested a review of the proposed live workspaces for compliance with the California Building Code and the California Residential Code of Requirements for live workspaces. The building official has reviewed the preliminary floor plans and has determined that they comply or can be brought into compliance with building, fire, and property management codes. A concern was raised by one of the commissioners about the proximity of the bathrooms in some of the units to the kitchen areas. So the floor plans were modified so that the bathrooms no longer open directly into the kitchen. The one remaining unit where that was not possible, the building official has assured us that it can be made code compliant by installing a weather-tight door between the 2 areas. The Commission asked that the applicants show the total number of suites existing in the building, the proposed number of units, and a clear indication of which units are currently rented and used, and which are under construction and which are vacant. The 4 School Street Plaza structures are currently divided into 35 suites. The current proposal is to remodel all the buildings and expand Building 8 to provide 12 live-work suites. Of the 12 proposed live-work suites, 4 are currently vacant and 8 are occupied. You can see a complete list of all suites, tenant business names, and descriptions of services in attachment C. How does the residential density resulting, another question of the commission was, how does the residential density resulting for the addition of 12 residential units compare with the density of the surrounding residential development? The project site is 1.9 acres in size, and approval of the proposed 12 live-work units would result in a density of 6.3 units per acre. The adjacent neighborhood on Park Road and Merwin Avenue is 2 acres in size and has a density of 14.5 units per acre. The commission wanted clarification. They requested a preliminary lead asbestos inspection of all the units proposed for live work. The applicants hired Norbay Consulting to perform an asbestos and lead assessment of the property. The assessment determined that there's no asbestos in the samples taken throughout the building. They did find lead in various locations, and the report advises that disturbance of the identified areas are subject to Cal OSHA lead in construction standard requirements. So there are procedures set forth when you discover that you have to follow in your building. The commission requested clarification of who owns the property, and is owned by Azazi and Associates, a California limited partnership made up of the owner, Farshid Azazi. The commission expressed an interest in knowing where the suggested conditions of approval contained in the draft resolution originated, and so in attachment H, we indicated after the conditions that were obtained from other agencies' ordinances, which jurisdiction that condition came from. Sometimes the condition comes from several different jurisdictions, have very similar conditions. One commissioner suggested that it might be a good idea for the applicant to prepare a pamphlet for new tenants explaining what being a tenant in the live workspace would entail. And the applicants are working on such a pamphlet, and we've attached the working draft as attachment J to the staff report. So the town code allows residential uses in the limited commercial zone with a conditional use permit issued by the Planning Commission. And the town code also gives the Planning Commission the authority to determine whether other uses not specifically listed in the conditional use section of the CL zone chapter are equivalent to those listed. So we believe that the proposed live workspaces, which combined permitted physical therapy and other professional offices with the conditional residential uses, can be approved via the conditional use permit process. With regards to parking and traffic, the complex was constructed with 62 parking spaces, exceeding the minimum required 42 on-site parking spaces by 20 spaces. So parking is not going to be impacted by the conversion of 12 of the spaces into live work. And the town engineer has verified that per his calculations, based on the conversion of approximately 6,300 square feet of commercial space to live work, will actually decrease the traffic to the site beyond what would be occurring if it was filled with commercial uses. The application requires a design review permit because they are proposing to expand the portion of the building, building 8 that faces the ball field. And the design they're using is going to be a typical, the building is a typical California public school building. And so bumping out a few feet under the overhang where the children used to gather in inclement weather, they're just gonna match the existing building. So there's not much articulation to that building, except for doors and windows and a flat roof line. The modified building matches the architecture of other old school buildings on the site. The addition has been designed to match the exterior with minor changes in the number and sizes of windows and relocation of the 3 rear doors accessing the spaces. The area of the addition is not adjacent to any residential structures. It faces the ball field and the pavilion, and the new walls will match the existing building construction and color. No new exterior lighting is proposed at this time, and lighting has been an issue that's been discussed at the other commission meetings on this. The applicants are proposing to change out the old light bulbs in the existing fixtures with LED bulbs to then assess how well the existing lighting illuminates the site. They will then design a lighting plan that, according to the building official, will have to comply with the property maintenance code and the energy code, section 402, as follows. The walkways around the property must have lighting using LED or fluorescent bulbs with lumens output equivalent to a 60-watt incandescent bulb. The lights must be spaced no more than 30 feet apart, have an on-off switch, an astronomical time clock, or a photocell and motion sensor, or photocell and a time switch to automatically turn the lights on when it's dark and turn them off again when it's light out. Staff has included as a condition of approval in the resolution recommending approval that the exterior lighting will also have to comply with the following. An exterior lighting plan showing existing and proposed lighting locations and fixtures shall be submitted with the building permit application, and any new external lighting shall use dark sky compliant fixtures and shall be approved by the planning director prior to issuance of the building permit. The plan shall limit light spillage beyond the areas necessary to light the entryways, travel paths, stairways, and parking lot, and shall avoid direct off-site illumination while also complying with the international property management and energy codes. The proposed conversion and remodel of 12 of the suites at School Street Plaza complies with the Fairfax General Plan policies and programs as follows. Land use policy 7.1.3 reads, a combination of commercial and residential land uses that are consistent with established building height should be encouraged on the same parcel. LU 8.1.1, the town of Fairfax shall facilitate the development of key housing opportunity sites to provide for the development of affordable housing as identified in the housing element. This site is identified as a location for affordable housing. The general plan foresaw rezoning the site to planned development district to enable the entire site to be all residential. But that the applicant made an attempt to start that process and it wasn't very successful. So he's trying to get the live work approved. In the future, he plans to maybe try to execute that housing element rezoning. Let's see. The conservation element 6.3.2 says that the town shall promote mixed-use development to provide housing and commercial services near employment centers, thereby reducing the necessity of driving. And housing element policy 4.1.1.3 says acceptance of live-work development. Town staff will prepare for consideration and approval by the Planning Commission and Town Council flexible standards that provide opportunities for live-work developments where housing can be provided for workers on site and/or caretakers or other type of housing can be provided. So we believe that the proposal does comply with the town zoning ordinance and it meets the intent of the town general plan. So we're recommending that you approve application 19-14 by adopting resolution number 2019-17, approving the proposed expansion and the conversion of 12 suites to live workspaces and setting forth the findings and the conditions for the project approval. And I did have one addition I wanted to make to the resolution number 2019-17, which is attachment A to your staff report. On page 3 under condition 6, it reads, any other changes made to the exterior of the building, including but not limited to new lighting, new signs, planters, etc., shall comply with the design review regulations of Town Code Chapter 17.020 and be approved by the Planning Commission or the Planning Director as required. I want to add a sentence there that says, any existing and proposed new equipment placed on any roof shall be screened in a manner approved by the planning director and in a way that does not detract from the appearance of the buildings. And that would conclude my report.
Phil?
I concluded my report.
Phil, please unmute yourself. I can help you with that.
Okay, thank you for your report. The mute button, okay. So next, the applicant or his representatives will be allowed to speak on the item. Yes, Laura?
May we ask questions of staff first before we open it to the applicant?
Well, yes, sure. That isn't the way the script is written at this moment.
Oh, okay. I thought
Sure.
that's how we usually did it. But
I know.
however, at one point though,
understand.
I'd like to ask questions of staff.
Trying to go by the script. I
Okay.
think
Actually, Phil,
questions for staff perhaps right now, because things then may come up that triggers the applicant. Is that okay? Anyone?
well, I would say the typical protocol, and I think that was just an error in the script, would be if there are strictly questions from commissioners, it would be good to allow them to ask the questions and Linda can respond.
Okay, why don't we do that? I think a slight change to the script, but the more normal protocol of an agenda. So let's go to commissions having questions for staff or the applicant.
Okay. So my question was, I think the first time we heard the applicant, the fence was part of the, and I believe, and there was no mention of the fence in this staff report. So I just wanted to confirm that there's no issues with this fence, because on the description and the public notice, it was listed fence height variance. So I just want to make sure that's not part of the review.
Excellent question.
They removed the fence height variance as part of the application, and I thought we had gotten it out of the notice.
Well, I just wanted to confirm that it had been removed from the application.
Yes, it was removed from the application, and it's not in our notice or our agenda. So,
Oh, okay. I just saw it like on the little descriptor on the top of the staff report. So I don't know if that's part.
oh
the-
no,
the
that's
part of
that
what
should have
goes
come
off
out. Yeah,
for notice.
they withdrew
Okay.
that. They withdrew that. Yeah.
All right. That's all I have right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's see, am I muted?
There
No.
is 2 more hands raised. I see Cindy first, followed by Norma.
Cindy, go ahead.
I had 3 questions on the units. Is 12C1 occupied now currently as a live-in rental? I know that isn't going forward going to be part of the 12 units, but I just wanted to clarify that right now it's still a live-in
Well, no,
rental.
I was advised by the applicants that there is no one living there. She uses that expanded kitchen area. Whatever business she runs, the people that come there often want to shower, and they do have tea and gather around that expanded kitchen area. But my understanding is that no one's living there.
Okay, and then the other unit is 12B-2.
Mhm.
Is that currently occupied as a live work?
I'm gonna have to check the
Okay.
table, but I don't think anyone's living there. I think it's too small. But let me real quick check.
I think on the table it showed somebody occupied it, but I wasn't clear on whether it was also being lived in as.
So when you look at the existing, which is page A1 of the plans, it doesn't appear that has any kind of bathroom or anything in it. So I don't see how anyone would be living there. But I will also check the
Okay.
too. Let me check the
And I had two other questions when you're ready.
okay, let me check the I think why you may be thinking that is because that was at one point proposed for a living unit, but that's been withdrawn. So I don't, you double check with the applicant, but I don't believe anyone's living there.
Okay. The second question, just from my clarification on this, the CUP applies to the 12 units in the application, and any changes to those units, either to expand them or to go from live work to work or whatever, would need to come back to the planning commission, correct?
That's correct. Even if they change the percentages of the floor area from what you're approving. You know
Okay,
how it's 50, almost 50-50 right now?
right.
They try to make it more living, they should come back to you for a modification of their use permit.
And then if there's a unit now that's not part of the 12 and they want to make changes to that to, let's say, go to a live work, that would need a new application to come forward?
They'd have to modify their existing use permit, which is for those 12 specific units and for the floor plans that have been presented to you. They can't change the floor plans without coming back, and they can't add new live work in other portions of the buildings without coming back to you.
Okay. And then on the resolution on page 5, number 27, it has the word flare in there. I think it speaks to what's prohibited, and I just wanted to clarify that that was meant to be fire.
It was. Can you give me the page number again?
Page 5.
Got it.
Number 27.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, that was just for my clarification, and those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. We do have Norma's questions next, if Norma can unmute herself.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Tamala. I had a question for Linda about item number 36 in the resolution regarding the demolition of kitchen and bathroom in 12C1. Is that to be demolished once the current tenant departs because it's not allowed in a workspace or because it was illegally constructed? Please remind me why that has to come out.
So the bathing facilities and the kitchen together make a living unit. And so once this tenant who uses the both of those, this was the request of the applicant, and we felt that it was reasonable. They have a tenant in there. She does use them, but she's not living there. But once she moves out, the things that make it a living unit need to come out. Or he has to come back and modify his use permit to try to increase the number of live works to 13 and get you to approve his retention of those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Can I go back to the correction that Cindy made, because I think I'm reading it more carefully. So page 5, number 27, I actually think that's supposed to be that commercial uses operating from the live workspaces shall not generate external noise or odor, glare, vibration, or electrical interference detectable. I don't think it was fire. I think it was glare. Does that make more sense than fire?
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you, because I didn't catch it. Okay.
I do see another hand from Esther.
Okay, Esther, go ahead. Just can I say one thing of our host is that I am the chair and I might want to make a comment before recognizing the next speaker possibly. So if you could let me acknowledge the next speaker, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Esther, go right ahead.
Okay. I had a question about the 700 square foot addition. I was
Okay.
looking at the demolition and the proposed plan, and they look the same to me. So are they adding a 700 square foot footprint? I couldn't tell.
Okay. If you look at page A1, which is the existing floor plan, and look at
Yes.
the building 8, you see how
Yes.
there's a dotted line that depicts, and you see where the doors open into spaces A, B2, 8B2, and along that wall. And you see how the walls come out further than where the doors are at 90-degree angles.
Right.
There's a roof over that. That's where they're proposing to pop out.
Oh, okay. So the footprint is popping out, but the roof line is remaining the same. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay,
On
good.
page 8, you can see that.
Yes. So they're kind of squaring off the
Right.
building footprint. Okay. Okay, great. I have a question about the trellises. So I read that I think they're adding trellises to soften the
No,
facade.
Yeah, I read that again, that it's not that they're adding trellises. We were just pointing out that the front of the building that you actually see when you drive into the parking lot and when you're looking at the front of the buildings, they've softened the school building look by building these large trellises. They aren't proposing that along where they're doing the addition, but it's not a side that's really visible unless you're sitting in the stands at the ball field,
Okay.
right?
But that's existing. Is that what you're saying? That they're already there?
Yes.
The trellises. Okay.
Right.
So it's not part of the application, but they've done
No.
this in an effort to soften
A
the
long
facade
time ago.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
So Phil, you need to
Phil, I'm
unmute
sorry.
yourself. You can go to your upper right-hand corner and there's an unmute button. See the 3 dots on your,
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
All right. I have a number of changes for the resolution language. Maybe I'll save those for later instead of at this moment because we want to hear from the applicant as well. Okay. So any other comments for staff? Okay, very good then. Is the applicant present?
So I,
Present, and I have allowed him to talk.
Can you hear me?
yes,
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, who's this?
Okay, good. Okay. If anybody needs any clarification, I can chat with you apparently as
Okay,
well.
if you could state your name. I know it's on the video. I'm not sure if it's getting on any other record. So Rick.
Okay, yeah, this is Rick Hamer for the applicant.
Thank you.
Good evening to this Zoom session. I'm going to simply answer the questions as they came up. The fence has been withdrawn. However, the stairway at the corner is one of the conditions that we're going to reopen the stairway with a access control gate. That would be the access. That would be the stairway that goes down to Broadway at Merwin. And that is in there somewhere. Maybe Linda can find it, but I just wanted to point that out. 12C1 is occupied by a massage technician, and no one's living there. 12B2 is occupied by a fashion designer. There's no one living there. We understand that use permit does apply to 12 units, and even if the percentage is changed, that needs to be fixed. On page 5, item number 27, it is flare. It should be flare. That would be FLARE, as in the type of device a highway patrol uses. And they put that verbiage in there so that people don't weld. And then on item 36,
So that people don't, excuse me, on the flare thing, so that people don't what?
so people don't weld.
Weld. Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's used by many jurisdictions in order to discourage welding. And that part of that is because many of these live works are used for artists. Yes, 12C1, that we had a meeting on the 10th of March with the town, that was the agreement that tea area and shower would be removed. And of course, we pulled a permit for the demolition of that when that occurred. As for the 700 square foot addition, the dotted line is there because the footprint is really not changing. The drip line of the roof extends there already. What we're doing is we're enclosing what is currently an open porch or patio area. And on the question about the trellises were added back in 1982, back when Building 6 was built. That was all part of the same project under the same permit back then. We've done some repairs to them. I think there's actually an open permit to repair some dry rot on those right now and to refoliate them. That's what I have for right now, unless there's more questions.
Okay, yeah, this is Phil Green. I had a question on the exit gate to Broadway. So that'll be something that a tenant can use to exit in an emergency?
Correct.
Okay, and it will not allow ingress of the public in normal circumstances?
We'll have a keypad going in the uphill direction. In other words, from the street to the parking lot, it will have a keypad.
Okay, and so that implies tenants will have a code to punch in?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none at this time, I'll bring the meeting. Oh, yes, Esther, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask a question or a consideration of the applicant. One of the units that is live work has a really tiny kitchen, and it's a really strange place. The way it's positioned, I was looking at 10E, and I don't know if this is a time to ask if the applicant would consider doing a little bit of reconfiguration there. It looks like it's a 5-foot wide kitchen counter space, and it just seems inadequately small. So is this the time to ask this question? I don't know if you can hear me, Phil.
The
Uh-oh,
mute button is getting up.
there he is.
I hear you. I agree that I'm looking at 10E. That is a strangely configured, looks like kind of an L-shaped unit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a budget reason or what the reason for modifying, or not modifying the space, what that reason would be, because it seems like if you just flipped the whole thing, so that the doors are on the right instead of the left, and then you remove that wall, you could get a much longer counter space, because 5 feet to me seems grossly inadequate. And it's like in a separate room, which, you know, you have to go through that kitchen to get into the bedroom. I don't know. I just
So
was
let's
wondering if that would be something
see.
the applicant was willing to look at or
Where it says-
revisit.
Where it says Suite 10E on the plans A1, right above that, there's an open door facing down on a wall. Are you talking about that counter behind that wall before the other gray wall? That's the kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you can barely get a refrigerator and a sink in there. I don't know how you would get a stove. It seems to imply that there is a stove, but it's just, I know mini stoves are like 30 inches, you know. Anyway, the thing is, my comment is that this space could be improved very easily, considering the scale of this project. I think that's just a little bit of demolition, but I was curious why, you know, that was not considered, if there was a reason for it, or maybe it's just something that got missed.
Am I live here? That is
Yes.
entirely existing, that unit. That unit was built like that by a previous tenant who had I believe it was a chiropractor that was in there. And so we proposed no changes in that unit. It is occupied right now, and it did not have the code problem regarding the kitchen opening up into the bathroom. Um, and it would probably be disruptive to the tenant to expand that kitchen by knocking out a wall.
So, in that this is being proposed to be live work, you know, if it were just a work space, I think that would be different. But because we are going to live work, and we were talking about what, you know, what the housing authority requires for storage for food, and in cabinets for utensils and, you know, cookware, things like that, because it is going in or you're applying for this conversion. I think this would be an appropriate time to, you know, to address that, in that it is not adequate for a, you know, for a live space. So I'm just wondering, you know, if we can address that. Or, I mean, I think the rest of the project, I think you've addressed all of the adjacencies, the, you know, bathroom to kitchen adjacencies pretty well. I think it helps very much to show where the bedrooms are. And I think this maybe was missed last time because we couldn't tell where the beds were or how this space related to this kitchen. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that could be, that would be considered in terms of improving it, since it is being converted to a live workspace.
If I'm still live, I'm looking at the plans here, and I think before the completion of this project, which is probably going to go on for over a year anyway, the width of that, or the length, which is indicated as 5 foot 1 inch on that space, could be extended into the room in front of it, which is got a length of 14 feet 6 inches, where the lettering Suite 10E is, where that could be redone in order to increase the square footage of that kitchenette area by approximately 40%.
Okay. I think I see what you're saying. So in other words, leave the sink, you leave all the utilities on the same wall, but just extend it, I guess, if you want to call it Project South, so that and then you would move the door. I mean, I know we're getting into details here, but is that what you're kind of suggesting, that you would just extend, you know, Project South of where that is now?
Correct. I am partially familiar with how this space is being used, and I think that would be the least disruptive to that tenant. And
Okay.
so I think that would be what we could do about that.
Okay, yeah, I think that would help, definitely.
Okay, well, we can,
Okay, thank you.
we're willing to do that.
So do we
Okay.
need to see, do we need to see
Great.
some, a condition added here for that? Or do we need to come back with, drawings again?
Can I add a comment to
Sure.
that discussion? Thank you. I like Commissioner Gonzalez Parver's comments. And I also, I want to say that I really appreciate the effort that was made to not have bathrooms opening right up to a kitchen sink. In this situation with Suite 10E, I also agree when you have the opportunity, or maybe when one of the other units is available, that you could move the tenant in for a week or two, which is the most it would take to make some changes. I would think you might consider swapping out the bathroom and the kitchen. And that way the kitchen could be wide against the large wall as you walk into it, opening up to the living space, which is rather pleasant. Could have a little counter there. And the smaller area would be a perfectly fine bathroom with access from both those bedrooms, one on either end. And the smaller space would be appropriate for a small bath. But that's it for me.
Am I still live? Okay. We have been formulating an expedited plan in order to accommodate people during the indefinite shelter in place by finishing that unit 12D2 and moving tenants around. So this would be added to the queue, Commissioner Fragasso.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a effective way to take care of tenants while you're in construction.
Commissioner Caroline?
Thank you. Mr. Hammer, I had a question about, I see on the list on attachment B, unit 110. I just, so that is, if I understand right, that is in that kind of the newer building that's at the corner of Broadway, correct?
Correct. 110 is in building 6 on the corner of Broadway, correct.
Okay, so I just was wondering why this this suite was selected to be one of the live work. I mean, to me, it made sense. The other ones, like the one that's over by the ball field and the other ones that are kind of in the back of the property. But, there seems, this is towards the front of the property. So it would seem like this would be more appropriate for commercial space. So I just wanted to see what was the reasoning for making that suite one of the live works.
Excuse me, which number was that?
Number 110.
Thank you.
The reason for that is it does have some history of residential use, and there was some unpermitted work done in there. So we were requested to correct that by redoing the tenant improvements. In other words, a tenant improvement was done regarding an unpermitted bathroom kitchen area. So we are correcting that. And that's why it's still in the permit.
Okay, all right. And I, as an architect, I've had some clients who were, interested in pursuing the live work, not in but in another jurisdiction and in San Rafael. And I think their rules were such that if you did have a live work, it would be towards the rear or like a second floor. So this is towards the back. It's not like it's right on Broadway. And when I did go to the site, it's kind of like down. It's kind of, it's kind of, so I guess that since I can understand then why that was added on to the list. But I would also like to say that I'm happy that you went with only the 12 units, because before I was concerned about the number that had been proposed. So I am happy that the total number got reduced in this application. So thank you.
Okay, any more commissioner comments of the applicant? Norma, was that? No, okay. All right, very good. Then we can move on to whether there are any public comments on this item.
Yes, Linda, do you want me to read the we've received?
So I'm looking at my emails. I don't see any, but we should wait a few minutes, right?
Yes, I have one email, which I will read. Dear
Well,
Planning,
how did it come into you? Did it come in on my emails?
correct.
How come I'm not seeing it?
Well, we'll resolve that later. Suffice to say, it's come in. In any event, and I just also remind people who would like to write in to limit their emails to 400 words or so. That amounts to about 2,400 characters. This one appears that it is within that range. Dear Planning Commission, I am in active litigation against Fred Izazi as a residential tenant of apartment 100.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Was illegally combined from 2 commercial units prior to my occupancy and without my knowledge. I only learned of this illegal arrangements after I consulted with an attorney. I consulted with an attorney after Mr. Izazi refused to make the ordinary and necessary repairs to my residential apartment after a water leak. The resulting mold damage to my personal property has never been abated or mitigated. Is this the type of landlord that deserves your consideration for certificates of residential occupancy? I think not. He is nothing more than a slumlord. Fred Izazi currently has residential tenants sprinklered throughout the School Street Plaza. This is a ghost ship disaster in the making. If you give the green light for certificates of residential occupancy, you will be breaching your fiduciary duties to the public at large. The School Street Plaza must be property converted to residential units such that each and every tenant lives in a unit that meets local and state code requirements, including proper routes for escape in the event of a fire earthquake. Thank you for consideration. Regards, PMB, Patrice.
Well, thank you, Patrice, for your comments. Does anybody have anything to say about that?
I have a question. And Ben, I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning of that. Can you just read the first few sentences or something? I missed that very beginning.
Sure. This describes litigation, so I'm not sure how relevant it is to the commission's discussion, but it does provide background. I am in active litigation against Fred Izazi as a residential tenant of apartment 100. This apartment was illegally combined from 2 commercial units prior to my occupancy and without my knowledge. I only learned of the illegal arrangement after I consulted with an attorney. Is that what you wanted to listen to?
Thank you.
Okay, that clears that up.
And I have another comment that came in now.
Okay, I was going to, if I may, just for one moment. Again, if you're watching on the town website, please submit your comment using the public comment form below the live stream. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand and we will call on you when it's your turn to speak. Again, if you telephoned in using Zoom, press *9 and staff will call you in turn. Or you may also submit your comments via email to lneal@townoffairfax.org. Okay, go ahead, Linda.
Okay, so this is from Liesl Blash, and she says, it is exciting to see this project come forward. I hope that it will allow some local businesses and residents to remain in place. We really do need to have space affordable to the many arts, healing arts, educational, and nonprofit businesses that provide the types of services that create a vibrant Fairfax culture. A good portion of the spaces are affordable to low-income individuals. Is there any guarantee that they will remain affordable? In addition, is there any way that the applicant can access funding that would allow him to retain these units as affordable or expand this space as an affordable live-work community in the future? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Liesl. Okay, thanks for reading. Is there anybody, just want to double check because of time lags and things here on this technology. Any more oral comments or any more written comments from anybody? Okay. So we will, hearing none, then we will now close the public hearing and ask for commissioners' comments, please. Any commissioners' comments? Cindy, please, thank you.
So I had a couple comments on this. One is the lighting on School Street Plaza, and I know we're going to get, there would be a lighting plan coming in, and we've talked about dark sky compliancy. But when we've talked about that mostly in the past in residential applications, and we've talked and focused more on, you know, light spillage and having the lighting fixtures point down. But one thing we really haven't talked about that I think can be more applicable to this application, and especially if they're looking at doing LEDs, for example, in such a large area, is the blue light. So the color spectrum of the lights that are put in. We've got, you know, there are environmental issues with very blue lights in the color spectrum. And what I would like to see, should we approve this application, we look at the resolution, is having some language in there, and I wrote some things down that addressed also compliancy on the color spectrum of lights that fit the international dark sky recommendations. So that was one comment I had about the lighting. The other thing is we talk about the uses in here in the CL zone, and we say that the uses shall only be the ones that are permitted in the CL zone, and then we have a paragraph that talks about what we wouldn't prohibit. But when you look at the allowed principal uses in the CL zone, there's restaurants, hospitals, sanatoriums, rest homes, clinics, medical and dental offices, laboratories, research facilities, physical and mental therapy establishments, professional offices, and daycare facilities. So I was thinking about those, and for example, something like a daycare facility in one of the live-work units, I'm not sure, and I wanted to see what the rest of the commission felt on this. I don't know that, for example, a daycare center would be appropriate, and I would want to look at perhaps adding that to prohibited uses for these live-work units, and having it be a little bit more specific as to the types of things that we would exclude from these units. So those were a couple of the comments that I had for discussion.
Okay, thank you. And any other comments? I have a number of comments about the reso itself. We could start with paragraph 27.
Excuse me, should we first close the public hearing before we edit a reso
I thought
and bring it back for commissioner? Are we still not talking to the applicant and public comments?
Right. We finished the applicant. We finished public comments.
Oh,
And
okay, thank
that
you.
was,
I stepped away for a moment. I missed it.
and
Thank you.
now we're back with commissioner comments.
Are you giving yours now, or do you want?
I'm going to give some now, actually, because kind of agree with Commissioner Swift that we have some issues between what the CL zone allows. However, in paragraph 27, I have a number of specific issues. So I'm going to, well, let me start here for now. Excuse me?
Mr. Azizi, you need to, there you go.
Is Mr. Azazi here and wants to make a comment? I don't want to foreclose that first.
He just muted himself again.
Okay.
There, he's unmuted himself.
Did Mr. Okay. I noticed Mr. Azazi's come on. Want to give him a chance to make any comments? If not, then we will close the applicant's comment period and the public comment period. And we're bringing it back for comment. So paragraph 27, I think we should, so flare word got me too. I think we should simply say no welding is allowed in that condition there. That would be a good idea. I was thinking no fire myself, wondering what that word really was. But of course, that's a welding term. I think we want to just simply say no welding in that paragraph. How we will address these other issues, I think, if I may, Commissioner Swift, I think a lot of this is addressed. It can't be a use that generates external noise, odor, vibration, or electrical interference. We might be able to say things like, noise levels have to be reasonable, or we could actually say no child. Think in paragraph 27, we need to think that through a little bit. I agree with Commissioner Swift there. We need to perhaps expressly exclude some other CL zone uses there. And then I had some other comments back on the resolution, if I may. So starting on, I'm going from the red line, but it's basically the same idea here. So whereas on the blue, on the red line, the proposal is a unique homegrown project. I'm proposing this language and we can have discussion from the ground up and is particularly suited to the repurposing of the site and for its existing full-time residents and to the needs of the community. I really want to hone in on the unique nature of this particular site, partly because of some commissioners' issues about future live-work projects and not necessarily being like this one. We're not really establishing an ordinance here. We're doing a CUP. My next comment in language is way over in, let's see here, paragraph 6 on page 3. Any other changes made to the exterior of any building? I mean, here we have a few buildings. It's a bit vague if we say the building. And then at the end, and existing, no, that's okay. Never mind. Just any building there on paragraph 6. Paragraph 9 on page 4. There shall be no storage of any materials or supplies for the businesses outside any of the buildings rather than the building. And I noticed I walked by there myself, and there is storage of some mattresses apparently in some visible but covered area. There's a lot of graffiti on the back of some of the buildings. I don't know if any of that's being taken care of. Paragraph 11, equipment installed on either the roof or exterior of any building must be screened from public view, and that additional language that was proposed there also. that it be not visible, etc. Paragraph 22 on page 5, the residential use of the live work spaces shall not interrupt or modify the external appearance of any commercial building frontage instead of just the. And 23, conducted in the last part of that, conducted in or near the walkways. And I see the change in 24. Paragraph 26, I would say no more than one employee excluding residents of any of the dwelling units, etc. 27, we've kind of gone over. Prohibited uses in the live work spaces are including but not limited to, a phrase there perhaps. Retail sales and or beverages, and here, again, we might want to get into childcare center or other uses from CL zone that we want to specifically exclude. Since we have this specific clause, we probably should add what we want to add for there. Then just one more change on paragraph 33. A fire sprinkler system is required throughout the entire building campus, assuming that's correct, or all buildings. I'm not sure how you want to phrase that. And then I'd sign that. I think the project is a good project. I'm happy that they've come around to, not having toilets facing sinks and kitchens. And I'm also happy that they are, willing to make other changes. I think that they frankly find the philosophy of working with your tenants an unusually nice one. That's a nice thing. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Phil,
Yes, sir.
to your comment about condition number 27, I worked on some language which for the commission's consideration. I'm a little reluctant to try to list uses which aren't allowed because, frankly, the attempt to be inclusive, the more people can point to something which is not included and say, well, that should be allowed. I believe it is the applicant's intent to only rent to uses that would be compatible with the tenant mix, including the residential. Nonetheless, the commission could consider adding at the very end of the last sentence, could be including prohibition of uses with any of these characteristics that would otherwise be permitted in the CL zone. And so the idea there is that when we're looking at uses that generate noise, odor, flares, vibration, electrical, we would encourage the property owner and his representatives to contact staff with any future tenants other than ones that are clearly compatible. For example, the use mix they have out there. But this would also give us some direction to have the last say so. And if there were a concern about whether or not it would be appropriate, we could simply bring that back to the commission for your determination.
I think that's a great idea. I like that. So any other?
I'm sorry, could you state that again for the staff that wasn't able to get that all down?
Okay, and I'll try to speak slowly. This is something also to be nice to our minutes clerk because we're into this digital world and we don't know if she's hearing zeros and ones. So at the end of the last sentence in 27,
I got that.
in condition 27, you would have a comma and then say, including prohibition of uses with any of these characteristics that would otherwise be permitted in the CL zone.
Thank you.
And
Yes, Commissioner Swift.
so relating to the daycare center, how would that apply if somebody wanted in a live work unit to have a daycare center on that facility?
responding to Commissioner Swift about the daycare center. I know it is not the applicant's intention to have circumstances involving a lot of children. He has previously stated that he would be concerned because of the commercial mix that having uses that involve children would be problematic. If your commission wishes to specifically not allow that, they could include that. But as I said, I think it's the applicant's intent. I guess children, they do generate noise.
And I guess from my perspective, you know, and I understand the applicant's intent, but I think for this project and the future of this property, that I think it would be, if the rest of the commissioners feel that a daycare center in one of those live work units isn't appropriate for this space, I think it would be clearer going forward to include that in the I don't know if it's paragraph 28 for the prohibited uses. I think it makes it clear for everyone on that. But again, I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel on that. And then I do have a couple reso changes once we get beyond my comment on the daycare center.
Yeah, it's true that when you start listing specific prohibitions in something like this, you end up saying, well, then that's all there is. I think what we can though add an old legal phrase to it, inter alia, and then say, you know, among these things, you know, and make it just mentioning like these things, among these, you know, this isn't permitted. And also, if my idea of making this application more unique and not general for future such applications works out, then we're keeping this fairly specific as it is. So, but you know, maybe talk to legal staff about that if they need to pipe in on that. And I don't see how it hurts to mention daycare centers prohibited. It's sort of obvious when you see the configuration here.
Well, we just ask the rest of the commissioners to see how they feel about that?
Let's do that.
Excuse me, Michelle and I have been raising our hand for 5 minutes and she's had hers up for 10.
Well, Norma, since you complained, why don't you go?
Michelle's had her hand up longer. Please let her go first.
Okay, Michelle, please.
Sorry, I wasn't going to address the issue Cindy's bringing up. I was just going to go to commissioner comments. And so my reaction is the same. I think that this applicant is reacting to a code infraction situation where they had illegal occupancy and illegal construction. And what we're seeing before us and what we saw in the past was a very patchwork project that is really substandard in terms of architectural improvements, the color, the landscaping, lack of landscaping, the control access, the garbage issues, just everything I've brought up all along. I don't think it's consistent with the general plan. I think that the housing element showed a shortfall previously, and that the intent of the site was to rezone to a PDD, which had a bottom density range of 20 dwelling units an acre, meaning the minimum units would be 20. It says in the housing element to put the housing elements at the back of the parcel, and that this is an opportunity site. I think it's a wonderful opportunity site in terms of a flat parcel, extremely buildable. I'd love to see our city partner with someone to do exactly what Liesel said, which was something I brought up before, which was to tailor to arts and healing, etc. But even beyond all of that, I do think this is going to be a precedent-setting project in terms of live work. I don't think that what we have before us in terms of, we have 12 units, 4 of them are less than 50% commercial, with the remainder barely at 50%, residential. So I just don't think it's a good design, and my vote will continue to remain as it was previously affirmed in recommendation of denial. I'm not sure why we even had this brought back.
Okay, Commissioner Fregoso, would you like to have your say now, please?
Thank you, through the chair. In regards to childcare, I don't know that we need to explicitly preclude child care. This is not, we're not trying to change the CCL. This is being considered under a very specific conditional use permit, CUP, for the proposed development, and a child care center. The resolution clearly states that the owner must secure a business license for each of these units, and the child care center would be governed by a stricter code requirement than what we see here today. So I don't know that it's necessary to have precluding language when, in fact, if someone were proposing a child care center here, the codes and the licensing required could not be met by this project.
Fair enough. Yes, there is a licensing process, and I don't know whether this would, qualify or not, but it's an interesting thought. I don't know if we need to get that specific with this, as long as it's understood that there will not be a child care center on the one hand. On the other hand, it's hard to leave things to the current desires of an applicant, because even though the applicant may not currently think that there should be a child center there of any kind, anything can happen. So, especially in this current world. So, any other comments, or maybe we'll call it to a motion pretty soon here. If we do, we have other than Commissioner Rodriguez. Okay, Commissioner Barber. Commissioner Gonzalez Barber.
Okay, got it. I was just gonna say, I think this is a great project. This is an opportunity site. And what I really like about this is that this is very organically grown, homegrown, if you want to call it. And, it's not perfect, but we have activities going on here that, came about because there was a need. And we have an opportunity here to make it safe and sound. And, we can't make this look like something that it isn't. This was a school building, and we're trying to make it look clean and safe, and just trying to improve the overall appearance of it. We're not going to redesign the whole thing unless there is a developer who wants to mow everything down and start over again. I think we have what we have to work with to make it better. And this is coming from a very big need in our community. And to the comment from that email about the ghost ship, we have very good qualified fire departments that are going to ensure that this is a safe place to work and live. And, we have to defer to them. They are experts. And I very much support this. I think the applicant has done a great job in addressing just about all of our comments. And yes, I'm not going to get into the details of why there are complaints. I think those have to be dealt with on a individual basis with the town. If there is mold growing in one of the units, then that can be addressed on an individual basis. But just in general, I am pretty happy with what the applicant came back with, came back and showed us. And I think that this is one of those opportunity projects that you study in school when you're in architecture school, how things evolve and how policies and ordinances come about because of these very special projects in special communities. So I agree with Michelle, this is not perfect, but I think it's going to be much better than it is now. And it'll also give the town a mechanism to enforce codes, because right now there is no mechanism to enforce codes. It's all illegal. So I think it would be great to give our staff, our town, the way and the tools to make this even better than it is now going forward. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? Is anybody ready to make a motion?
Wait.
I've been reminded by email that that the planning commissioners are supposed to be called on by name to vote. You can't just say all in favor and all against. You have to call them by name and let them vote when we're in a Zoom meeting like this.
Okay, so when we want to do a roll call vote then.
Thank you. A roll call vote.
And I guess Ben is designated to do that, at least in the script. Okay, Commissioner Swift, one more comment?
Yeah, on the resolution, I had a question. One, I think for staff, the first whereas on page 2 of the resolution talks about plans that were dated November and December of last year. Should those be updated to the March plans?
Yes, they should. I'm making that correction.
Okay.
March 5th,
March 5th?
2020. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then I'd like to add to the resolution the comment about the dark skies and the color of the LEDs. And what I was looking at was page 3 of the resolution.
Condition 3.
The top of page 3. I think it's the last half of number 2.
Last half of number 2.
Okay.
So it's on the top of page 3.
All lighting shall be dark sky compliant and shall limit light spillage beyond.
Right. So what I'd like to change that to is all lighting shall be dark sky compliant to include compliance with color temperature to minimize blue rich lighting.
Does anybody know what that color temperature is? I think it's usually in angstroms or something.
I think it's 3000 K or
Kelvin.
below when you look at the International Dark Sky Association. That's what their recommendation is.
Okay, that shouldn't be any problem for anybody, right? I don't have any problem with that.
Well, I think the town council endeavored with its new street lights to install lights which had a color spectrum of 3000 K or less. That's generally
Correct.
Interestingly enough, it's generally the warmer more yellow lighting you used to see with the old sodium lights. Yes, as Cindy points out, the blue spectrum lights have been associated with various disturbances.
including birds and the like.
Bats,
So
yeah, all kinds of
yeah. All right.
Okay. So now, yes, Norma Fergroso, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we're moving towards a motion, I would just like to say that I agree this is not a great project. It's poor design, it's basic construction with little attention to any architectural detail. The problem is that it has been occurring illegally, and people have been living there in unsafe and unhealthy conditions with no permitting. And at least it does provide some housing and some more health and safety monitoring now that we can do by the town. And the CUP that would be issued brings the building into a better condition in terms of health and safety, and keeps people to a great extent in their homes, although I understand there will be some turnover, but the existing conditions were detrimental. And while it's not considered to be one of our finer moments, it does at least provide some housing that is relatively affordable and maintains tenants in place. And it does have some benefit. And so it gives us more control over what would otherwise continue to be an illegal, hazardous living situation. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I hear you, Commissioner Rodriguez, and it would be nice to have, it would be nice to have 4 or 5 designated affordable units here for the next 50 years. But you know what we have is a property that is a little derelict. We're bringing it up. The owner really wants to balance his needs and the requirements that we are imposing and his tenants. And all that is better than it was. Maybe it isn't the ideal 20-unit development that would be nice to have, but it's better than it was. And my vote would be to go with it. And I don't know if anybody has more comments or if we're ready for a motion. Yes, Commissioner Caroline.
Yes, I would just like to say that it's not a perfect project, but I think that I would echo Norma's comments. I think she said it pretty eloquently, and at least now we've got a use permit, and we've got we've got documents to help keep we've got documents to help compliance at the site. So I'd also like to say that I think that the applicant also responded to our comments, and the last set of drawings and all the exhibits that were attached, I mean, they were listening, and they seem to provided the information that we wanted. So, and I'm happy that they reduced the amount of units to, I think, a more appropriate number on the site.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Caroline. Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber. Was your hand up?
Okay. Yes, it was. I was just wondering if we could add the modifications to Unit 10E under 36 in the resolution. Not really sure how we want to word that, but it is talking under 36, it's talking about Unit 12C-1. I don't know if we want to create a second bullet there or another number below that and say that the kitchen area in Unit 10E will be expanded or altered as, I guess, offered by the applicant. 40%, I think, is what he said. there was an opportunity to expand it 40% from what it is now.
Right, we do need to address that issue. Thank you for bringing that up. How can we handle that best? I mean, the way you said it is one way. As building inspection approves of something like that, Commissioner Fragoso?
I was thinking that since the owner or his representative are willing to make the changes to, I'm referring to Suite 10E, which has that tiny little bathroom, I'm sorry, that tiny little kitchenette in between 2 bedrooms. If he would be willing to move the kitchen out to where the bathroom now is, it would create a very lovely living area with kitchen and living on that right side, and then the bathroom could go in between. If he could work with staff on coming up with a good solution for that, I would be willing at this point to leave it to staff to make that final approval on that switch.
Can I just say that I'm worried that if you flip those that way, that there's not enough room in the, if you turn the kitchen into the bathroom, there's not enough room for bathing facilities in there. You'd have to really rework the floor plan in order to get the bathing facilities.
You know what? You could do one of those showers that with a drain in the corner or the middle of the room, and it's a shower, right? It's not a bathtub.
The only thing about, us specifying that kind of thing is architects.
Toilet and the sink and everything in there.
And I think, it's sort of the type of thing where if we specify something like the kitchen of 10E will be increased by 40% to allow for some,
And it was that the counter space would be increased, correct, Esther?
Yes, so I think it's just that the storage, the counter space and the storage for food and
Be increased by 40%.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of getting enough space to allow for the requirements, which is a refrigerator, stove, and a kitchen, and cupboards or shelving for food storage or kitchen storage. And I think I would be fine leaving it up to staff to approve the proposed configuration.
And
is there a building code aspect to that? I mean, is there something we can actually pin this on, refer to minimum size for a kitchen like this, or not?
I don't know. You could
We didn't-
try. Ben, do you know?
I don't think we would meet the requirement. I believe there is a formula, but it's very difficult to make most houses in Fairfax comply with that. With that, I think, if the applicant is willing to expand that by up to, if you want to say 40% increase in the counter space.
Counter and cabinet, right? Counter and cabinet.
Yeah, counter and cabinet, yeah.
Okay.
We could just add that as a new condition 37 and move 37 to 38.
Yes.
Okay.
Clarify between the
I
units.
think that would work.
Seems like a good solution.
Okay.
Okay, is anyone ready to propose a motion?
I'll take a stab at a motion.
Okay,
I move approval of the conversion of 12 commercial spaces to live-work units, a conditional use permit and design review permit for application number 19-14 to include all the suggested edits to the resolution and design elements of the plans before us. I'm not sure if staff wants to go through and list those, what you have. I don't have a full listing of all of them, but
You want me to read the
You want
changes you made?
edits as if you-
please to enter that into the record as a full listing. That would give us a more comprehensive resolution.
This actually will be good for me because I believe I got all of them except for the very first one that Phil made under the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas. I was going to listen to the tape. I didn't catch what you said there. You said the live work proposal is a homegrown project that was created from the ground up, and then you added something there that I missed.
So is a unique homegrown project, particularly suited to the repurposing of the site for its existing full-time residents, et cetera.
Okay, so what Phil said on that one, I got at that time. Thank you.
Okay.
Then on page 2, under number 1, we changed the date on the plans to March 5th of 2020. On page 3, under number 6, we added an any. We said any other changes made to the exterior of any building. And then at the end, we added any existing and proposed new equipment placed upon any roof of any building shall be screened in a manner approved by the planning director in a way that does not detract from the appearance of the buildings. I'm sorry, I missed one at the top of the page, page 3, the second part. All lighting shall be dark sky compliant to include compliance with color temperature to minimize blue rich lighting. And then on page 4, number 9, we changed it to add some language, and it's now going to read, there shall be no storage of any materials or supplies for the businesses outside any of the buildings. Number 11 on the same page, we changed to any equipment installed on either the roof or exterior of any building. We added the word any, must be screened from public view, and then we
Any of the buildings.
Hmm?
Any of the buildings.
Yes,
Or could you
exterior of
say-
any of the buildings.
Right.
Did I not say that? Okay.
Okay.
And then we also added the language that we had added on condition 6, that any new equipment placed on any roof shall be screened. So it's going to be in 2 conditions, condition 6, and then again at the end of condition 11 on page 4. Then on page 5, condition 22, we added the word any, appearance of any of the commercial building frontages. The residential use of any of the live workspaces shall not interrupt or modify the external appearance of any of the commercial building frontages. That's what you
Right.
changed that to be. Under 23 on that same page, we changed that to read, the commercial and residential components shall be restricted to the live work units and shall not be conducted in or near was added, the walkways, rear yard area, or parking lot of School Street Plaza. Under 26 on that same page, we changed it to read, no more than 1 employee excluding residents of any of the dwelling units shall work or report to work on the premises.
Mhm.
Okay, 27, the word is going to remain flare, but we added the language at the end after adjacent neighbors, comma, including prohibition of uses with any of these characteristics that would otherwise be permitted in the CL zone.
What does that mean?
That means that if someone proposes a permitted use in the CL zone, right, that's one of the listed permitted uses that generates exterior noise, odor, flaring, vibration, or electrical, right, interference detectable to the normal sensory perception, it's going to be prohibited.
Okay, thank you.
So childcare with, you know, a lot of noise and screaming, that could create objectionable noise. I believe that's what the person that recommended that.
I'm good with that if
Okay.
everyone else is.
And then under 28 on the same page, prohibited uses in the live workspace, including but not limited to retail sales of foods, and then it goes on. Okay, then on page 6, under 33, Phil wanted to add the word campus, which I think makes sense. So it's going to read, a fire sprinkler system is required throughout the entire building campus, which complies with the requirements of the National Fire Protection Association. That covers all the buildings, 6, 8, 10, 12, and the, 6, 10, 8, and 12. And then,
And that alone is a huge improvement.
yes. Okay, then we added a new 37 that's going to say the kitchen counter space and storage area in Unit 10E will be expanded at least 40%. Will be expanded as offered by the applicant by at least 40%. And then the numbering will be changed after that. You know, 37 will become 38. And those were the changes that I thought you gave me.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
That is my motion.
Okay, so then we need to have a roll call vote, please.
So we need a second.
I second the motion.
Second,
I second.
that was Esther.
Yes.
Okay, and I could do the roll call vote.
Yes, please do.
Okay, Commissioner Swift,
Aye.
Commissioner Fragoso,
Aye.
Commissioner Caroline,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
No.
Chair Green.
Aye.
And can I just have on the record that the reason why I'm voting no is because I think it's precedent setting regarding the live work, and that the commercial portion of it is 50% or less, that it's inconsistent with the general plan land use and housing element, and that we have low quality design with little benefit to the city.
We've got that on the record. Okay.
Also, for the record, it's noted that the motion passes.
Motion passes, and there is an appeal period of 10 days and
10
a
days.
$50 fee to any appellants. Okay, the second agenda item is 2181 Myrna Avenue.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I live in the vicinity of the second item, so I will recuse myself from this and
Okay,
come back for the final report.
all right. I was just going to say application number 20-1.
Don't go anywhere.
Permit, use permit. Staff, thank you.
Okay, we discovered late today that this item was not appropriately noticed. The notice did not include the indication that a tree permit was being applied for. And so we are recommending, with the applicant's concurrence, that you continue this until your May meeting, the May 21st meeting, because it wasn't properly noticed.
I'll move to continue, if I might, Chair Green, this item to our May meeting.
Yes, that's an interesting point. I had an issue with some tree problems with that property myself. So, any
I'll second.
is that a motion? that's been seconded
Yep.
to continue.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
I guess we need to take another roll call vote with that, right? Oh, Commissioner Caroline.
Yes, I have a question then about the tree. So is the issue is that they haven't, have they had their meeting for the tree permit, or that it wasn't included in the notice?
They had the meeting and the tree committee made their recommendation, but it wasn't noticed for you to take action on the tree permit.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
I have a question about whether we could separate the applications. In other words, separate the tree, do the discussion on the rest, and then
We
the
have
tree
asked that,
would-
we've actually asked that question of the attorneys on other applications, and they have not advised us to do that. They have said, keep everything together. So,
Yeah, the applicants kind of depend on having the project as a whole looked at. So, and one thing leads to another with these things. So we need to do, I guess, a roll call vote on the motion to continue this item that was seconded.
Did we have a second? I'm sorry.
we did.
Yes, I second
Okay.
it.
So I will now do a roll call vote. Commissioner Newton,
Aye.
Commissioner Swift,
Aye.
Commissioner Fragoso,
She's
went away.
recused.
She
oh,
recused.
excuse me,
Oh,
that's,
right.
I'm sorry.
recused.
My apologies. Commissioner Caroline,
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Harbor,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Aye.
and Chair Green.
Aye.
So noted, the motion passes unanimously for continuance.
The motion passes unanimously for continuance of this item. So now we are moving on to the discussion items, it appears. And that is Director Berto to give the staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. As you know, this discussion about objective design and development standards was previously considered by your Commission in February. Some brief background, which is addressed in more detail in the staff reports for the February and this meeting, is the state has recently changed their housing statutes considerably in response to the housing affordability crisis. And they have drastically limited and in many cases eliminated local discretionary review of housing projects involving more than one unit. And their regulations in a variety of statutes have limited local review only to objective standards that are in place at the time a development project is submitted. And in response, the local jurisdictions have been working on developing objective development standards. The state did make available through Senate Bill 2 some grant opportunities to develop objective standards. And the town successfully applied for such a grant. It is a collaborative venture with 10 other Marin jurisdictions in developing objective development standards. It was recognized that doing so would provide a lot more bang for the buck. We were able to obtain a top-notch firm that is doing a very comprehensive effort. It's noted that the County of Marin, with their resources and staff, is leading this effort. And the design firm that is doing the work is Opticos, a well-known regional design firm. The coronavirus circumstances have drastically changed how everybody is doing business, indeed, if they're not precluded from doing so at this time, to the point of public services, we have been involved in a series of workarounds because the ability to meet in person has been eliminated. And I dare say that the ability to meet in groups will likely be severely limited for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. There had been a series of public workshops scheduled starting in February that morphed into a webinar. And then it was realized that due to the constraints placed on everybody involved, that the feasible option to pursue at this time was to do a web recording that included graphics and a community survey. The survey was always considered as for inclusion in the effort. The town of Fairfax has posted links to that survey and the recording description, which is very good and very informative, describing and what this objective design and development standards process consists of and the why. More background, but you're hearing it from the professional voices and the people directly involved in producing this product as it has gone so far. Staff would recommend everybody to go to the Town of Fairfax website. On the first page of that of our town site, under recent news, you'll see a header stating Objective Design and Development Update. Open that up, click on that, open it up, and it will take you to a paragraph description. The paragraph includes a link to the county webpage, and the county webpage includes the recording and the survey. Staff encourages everyone who is interested and knows about this to participate in the survey. It's important to establish local community preferences for building typology and inform decision makers and reviewing entities such as this Planning Commission of what those preferences are. Staff acknowledges that this is a very challenging time for public comment. Certainly when we applied for our grant, we actually signed up for additional community workshops that would have been facilitated by the consultant. We're working on something very similar to what we have tonight, likely a Zoom platform, where we will try to be as interactive as possible with the public in explaining where we are in the process. The staff report also describes timelines for that process and what the next steps are. Fundamentally, we will be developing a toolkit. This is part of what happens when you do 10 jurisdictions. There are 10 Marin jurisdictions, I might add. So we all know that Marin is a very unique place. And certainly if you go around the county, I would say that the communities share much in common. And so they will be developing an overall toolkit, and they will be basing the objective standards on place types. And these are different types of residential development, building types, and site conditions. An example would be suburban versus downtown core and things of that nature. From the very preliminary draft information that staff has looked at, it seems like they are capturing a lot of the elements that each of the communities, including Fairfax, contain. I believe that the communities, including Fairfax, submitted a total of 792 sites to inform the process. So we certainly have been participatory in trying to identify exemplar sites. For example, we sent in the Alpine building as an example of a beautiful historic architecture, representing the community in a very prominent way. There will be a community engagement plan, notwithstanding the shelter in place, social distancing, and likely virtual aspects of that community engagement plan. And again, we're all working through this right now. And we're trying to do our best to make sure that we are as inclusive and as transparent as possible, while at the same time recognizing that the state laws are in effect that limit any jurisdiction in the state, and specifically Fairfax, to using objective development standards only when looking at, for example, proposed multifamily development. So the clock is ticking on this. The sooner we get this process well and truly underway and start to develop what those standards will be, the better towards an end goal of adopting those development standards in the town of Fairfax. One of the things that Fairfax is also proposing, based on prior commission feedback, is to be involved in a historic assessment. Staff recognizing that the character of this town is very historical. There are a number of buildings that frankly would qualify for registration on various historic lists if the town were so desired to do so. But that it certainly informs whatever efforts and standards the town decides to pursue. That this historic character is very important. To that end, as noted in the staff report, staff will be submitting a request for proposal to various qualified architectural historian firms. I am requesting that the town council, that the planning commission provide 2 commissioners on an ad hoc subcommittee for 2 purposes. The one would be in selecting the historic consultant, so reviewing their bona fides. And the second would be to provide feedback on the proposed schedule and tasks. And this is also a good way, I think, to reach out to the community and to utilize the expertise and deep community roots that your commission have in spreading the word about what this process is. We know that we're not going to succeed in doing this without community participation. And we recognize that Fairfax in the past has been justifiably cautious in embracing changes. I would just simply say that this train is coming, and it's one of those situations where we're going to have to make some changes in order not to get run over by these changes that the state have mandated. So staff is recommending for your planning commission that you appoint an ad hoc subcommittee with 2 commissioners on it. Staff intends to also reach out to people with historic interests in Fairfax, this Fairfax Historical Society, other prominent individuals involved in this. And again, these are people with deep roots in the community who understand the historic character of this town. And so that's the first thing, is to appoint 2 members to the subcommittee. And then the second thing would be to provide feedback to your commission going forward on the objective design and development standards process as a way to develop more knowledge and information and circulate this information. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioner Newton.
So in the subcommittee, do you envision including 2 members from this commission and other people from the public that you might reach out to, who also, as you were saying, would have deep roots in the community?
Yes.
I'd like to say perhaps the chair of the planning commission should be one of those members. I'm sort of volunteering. I think it's an incredibly important thing. Norma Fregoso?
Thank you. I actually also wanted to volunteer, given my background with design and historic preservation programs.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things we really need here is identity of historical buildings. And we've been discussing this for a long time. Cindy Swift had her hand up.
I had a couple questions. Unincorporated county is included in this as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have the staff report talk that we're not meeting our RENA goals? Do you have the specifics on that you can share with us or send us to where we are?
I will provide that information. Unfortunately, I was not able to get the actual count. I would say that unlike most jurisdictions in the county and indeed in the state, we're looking great for our very low and low income housing, thanks to Victory Village. So that's usually the one that the communities simply can't get an adequate number of housing, and Fairfax has exceeded our numbers in that regard.
Okay, so yeah, I'd appreciate getting something from you that states all the categories where we are. And then on the community engagement plan, as you said, it's critical to have full community involvement in this. And I know there were a lot of workshops planned with the community. Do you see kind of the end, because of where we are with shelter in place and what that and how that impacts a project like this? Do you see this project as having to be extended a little bit beyond what I assume there was a project timeline at the beginning? And do you see this having to, because of those needs with community engagement, pushing this out a little bit further?
That's an excellent question, and it's one that, frankly, staff have been mulling over. I think that given the realities of the challenges of converting what would otherwise be, already held community workshops and putting together alternative formats for outreach and engagement, that there will likely be some time slippage. How that relates to our other partner agencies. For example, I know with San Anselmo, they are facing imminent applications for multifamily development, so they are anxious to get objective development standards enacted. Nonetheless, we know that Fairfax will take the time it takes to reach a decision on this. And I would, yes, that's a long-winded way of saying that we will do our best to do the outreach in a timely manner, but it will take the time it takes.
Thank you.
Any other comments of staff? Okay. I mean, I think I just want to push for this. One of the reasons we need to do this is because the state is forcing on us, these things that they're forcing on us, and we need to be able to, maintain our community aspects. One of which is we are backed up against open space, and we don't have too far to expand. Commissioner Newton.
So as I understand the format of this report, it looks like you would be opening the question of creating this subcommittee to public comment and then having further discussion as opposed to a question and answer. So from my perspective, we just went through questions of the commissioners asking staff, and before we engage in the deliberations, maybe we would open it up to the public. Is that right?
Well, I was going to get to that. That is exactly, Mimi, that's the next thing. I was asking if any more commissioners have questions from staff, and then we will indeed open it up to public comment. Okay, hearing no more.
I do, sorry.
All right.
You didn't see my hand, sorry. I just wanted to better understand when we first started to go down this road there was going to be a staff level kind of discussion that the Planning Commission was involved in, and we were going to try to frame something from the information we were hearing at that time, and then we were going to talk about this public outreach program that, you know, for us, maybe we do special interest outreach to business and senior community or whatever, and then we were going to kind of talk about what ordinances made sense. And so where does that flow into this now timeline? That's my question.
It's an interesting question. What we've got from the app from Opticos is their layout of the tasks and rough timelines. I'm certainly open to commission direction and from each and every one of the commissioners about how to do that Planning Commission direction on each aspect of these work elements. I think that's one of the benefits of having a subcommittee, is that we can get way more granular into the details of what each of these work elements involve, and report back to the Planning Commission in a meeting context where it's, for obvious reasons, not suited to super detailed analysis and discussion.
Okay, fair enough. What are you looking for tonight from the commission? You're muted. Ben, you're muted.
Ben, you're muted.
Okay, my apologies. Sometimes it gets confusing. What we're looking for is basically the commission to appoint 2 commissioners, and if you to a ad hoc subcommittee, if you have suggestions about individuals or groups, organizations that you believe should be consulted or included in a subcommittee, as is typically the case. A smaller group is a lot more agile. You know, sometimes it's super challenging to get people together for a meeting, let alone as we're learning the intricacies of Zoom or some other virtual meeting platform. I can't tell you how many dozens of emails I've fielded or promulgated this week just trying to put this meeting together. So a smaller subcommittee, but individuals that would be involved. So that would be the main thing. And then as I said, tonight, it wouldn't be so much in terms of feedback on the schedule and tasks, but that would result out of meetings with the subcommittee. And I would hope to be scheduling those meetings very shortly. So certainly within the next 30 days.
Okay, well, I guess we could now open this item up to public comments. Are there any members of the public? And we have a perhaps 2-minute lag. Or do we?
Right, Phil. As you point out, we now have to, for people who are calling in on the live webcast or writing in on the live webcast, we should wait the 2 minutes. In fact, I'll start my countdown timer.
I'll just remind members of the public, if you're watching on the town website, submit your comment using the public comment form below the live stream. If you're on Zoom, use the raise your hand feature and staff will call on you when you can have a turn to speak. If you telephoned in, press *9, staff will call you, or you could have submitted emails to lneal@townoffairfax.org.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a side screen, and I'm sure Linda is too. Any of those written call-in comments, or and our Zoom host could also inform me, but I do not see any call-in comments.
No oral comments.
Through the
We do
chair.
not have any comments on the Zoom chat or any hands held up from our attendees.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes. Yes, Norma.
Thank you. I would also like to recommend, and Michelle, I'm not sure what your workload is or your interest, but you are one of the most skilled in, given that it is your background to work with development standards, and it has been an interest of yours. So I don't know if you are interested in that committee, but you would be an excellent person to participate at that level.
Yes, I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
But we're still in the public comment period. There are no public comments. So
No, and we're into the 2-minute period, which would account for the lag. My only concern, and we could do it if it's the commission's desire, but if we end up with 3 commissioners, we are considered a commission meeting for purposes of the Brown Act. So we would have to notice the meetings and things like that. It would be a much more formal undertaking. Whereas an ad hoc committee of less than a quorum, involving less than a quorum of the current commission meeting. Excuse me, no, it's not a quorum of the commission. I'm sorry, 3 wouldn't be.
okay, so I said that I could back out if any other commissioners are interested. I'm fine with that. And in fact, Michelle is probably qualified for this, I'm sure. I don't know your background completely. Was there a question?
No, I was just going to go back to what Ben was saying about the quorum, and that for us, 3 wouldn't be a quorum.
It's not an issue of quorum, but a Brown Act violation to have more than 2 commissioners at any meeting.
Well, I'm not sure whether we're looking at the quorum of this committee to be formed or us. If you can clarify that, perhaps.
Well, anytime there are more than 2 commissioners meeting together, regardless of whether they're having other members of the public meet with them, you need to do a public notice 3 working days in advance, I think it is. So it does make it more cumbersome to have meetings when you have 3 of us. It's doable.
2 would be better.
Right now with the governor's kind of alleviation of the Brown Act, probably not. But I think Norma and Phil are great. I think my major concern right now has to do with the community engagement plan, that initially there was going to be a planning commission kind of participation in an open house where there was going to be some opportunity to get some briefing. And I feel like I generally understand what this is about, but I don't. And then there's multiple workshops that were scheduled, and then the stakeholder focus group. So, hopefully, I look forward to seeing what you all come up with in terms of the recommendations for inclusion of who should be included in those focus groups, or, how we're going to get enough feedback and outreach to our community members, because they are very vocal and want to be involved, but yet we do need to move this item along. So thank you.
Well, what is the suggestion here then? Do you have what you need, staff, to take this back to town council, or where we're going with this?
Well, and again, as is appropriate with an ad hoc committee, I'm sensing a consensus that the chair and Ms. Fragoso would be serving on that subcommittee, unless there's some dissent or desire to have a formal vote. I don't think that's necessary or even necessarily appropriate.
Could you
Can I
clarify?
just-
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Cindy.
Can I just clarify if there was anyone else that was interested in doing this?
Now, I would also say that our goal in this response to Commissioner Rodriguez's comment, our goal is to report back to the Planning Commission. So any action items or even formal recommendations would be presented or that would take place in a Planning Commission meeting. It's certainly, we know that in Fairfax, it's critical to have this public outreach, and that we're going to be very challenged to do that in a way that people accept and feel as though that they can participate. So that's probably job number one, is to strategize on how we are going to solicit this feedback and make sure that those people feel as though they've been heard. So yeah, but this is going to come back to your entire commission.
Can you clarify, Ben, the role and responsibilities of this subcommittee? The way I read it, it is to keep it, to stay with the ODDS schedule and providing timely feedback to commissioners and assist staff in selecting a historic consultant. This does not say that it's the subcommittee necessarily who would handle the community participation process for this whole enchilada, right?
That's correct. That the idea
I mean, people, the subcommittee could be involved, but it is not the subcommittee's responsibility, from what I see, to undertake the community education process in this regard.
We were originally intending to already have workshops scheduled, and we still have a proposed community workshop coming up. As I said, Opticos and some of their team members and staff, this is a huge question about how do we adequately inform the community, engage the community, and deliver a work product that is consistent with what the community wants or will accept. So in terms of what this subcommittee is doing, it's going to be feeding information to the Planning Commission. And as I just said, because of the brave new world we are now engaged in, one of the things that we'll be doing is saying, how do we get the community involved? How do we make sure that everybody knows about this, that doesn't feel that they've been blindsided? And I can say that on a very preliminary basis, there's been some really good suggestions already voiced. And so when we're working with your subcommittee and then going back to your commission, and so the next Planning Commission meeting is May 21st, this will be an agenda item. And we'll be reporting back whatever results we have in terms of strategies for engagement, process or progress in hiring a historic consultant. It's staff's hope that we can get pretty close to having that consultant hired at this point by the next Planning Commission meeting.
Great.
Very good. When, so you'll report back, I guess, that Norma and I tentatively here will be on this ad hoc committee. And
yes, and you're not planning to go out of town anytime soon, are you?
No.
Good.
Not in the next 15 days.
Do you think you could clarify just the scope of work for the historian?
Yes, let me look at the details. Give a sec. And this, again, I'll have a lot more details to do, to provide. It's basically going to feed into our local place types. We will likely be involved in some sort of reconnaissance survey work to actually look at proposed to assess buildings and other features. And I'm just looking at some of the preliminary scope information that I have. And so they will base that on the criteria that is used in evaluating potential historic resources. And they will put together an engagement plan with local community volunteers. They will recommend options and tools for protecting existing resources. And this isn't necessarily formally designated historic resources. We know that we have historic resources of different levels and magnitudes, but this is not necessarily to be feeding in straight to a recommendation for historic designation, unless that's something that emerges out of the process as something that is desired. The survey and cultural resource recommendations will feed directly into objective development and design standards. So the intention here is to protect our historic resources, protect the town's historic character. And I'm just going further. Yeah, and basically come up with a time frame for delivering a final work product. So this will have to be a collaborative effort with the design team and other experts that the county and the other 9 jurisdictions participating in this effort will be using.
Thank you. Just, was there a definition of historic resources in whatever you were reading?
Well, and again, I don't know if tonight is the night to dive into this, but there's generally, I believe, 7 criteria that that are used by the Secretary of the Interior. And
Okay, so it's state level historic resources.
U.S. Yes, the U.S. Department of the Interior and the state historic preservation
State preservation officer, historic preservation officer.
Yeah. And again, I would caution that our goal here is to evaluate historicity and probably at a district level, downtown district, for example, rather than necessarily looking at buildings for nomination, unless out of the collaborative effort that occurs in the public outreach, some suitable resources are determined to be appropriate for those type of designations.
And the reason why I brought that up is because I appreciate the federal and state designation. Locally, those volunteers are going to be important because of something we talked about earlier with the street school plaza, is that we're known for having arts, healing, musicality, and those are more people-based, or where they played or where they did art or displayed things or created music or, something like that. So physical building is one thing, that next level of work is going to be a kind of a local effort. Thank you.
Yeah, cultural resources.
Yeah, Cindy.
And I think to that point, I think the general plan goes into and discusses historical resources along the lines of, like you said, what is Fairfax historical resources, whether it's a mural or something else. So you do have those levels, but I think what would be a good outcome, one of the outcomes of this would be identifying and understanding the state and federal requirements and what in our community would benefit from designations potentially that could protect them going into the future. So it's a combination, I think, of kind of what our general plan talks about, the local Fairfax historical resources, and then kind of designations that may protect our resources.
There's a lot of overlays on historical. There are private organizations who go out there and certify buildings and put plaques down. And some of them, and there are government identities of buildings, which then puts the owner under tremendous pressure for conformity to certain standards that maybe some of them don't want. And there's a lot of loosey-goosey stuff in history going on around town. I remember the people who work in the theater. I was in the Fairfax Theater late one evening, and the movie was great. And the staff guy was saying, "Oh, and this theater is designated as this historical monument." And I was thinking, "Wow, that's interesting." You know, and so we get this. We need some authority here. This is the problem. First, identifying the buildings, if there are any that warrant approaching an owner saying, you know, would you like to, you know, work with us and develop it into a historical federal building or state designation. And then of course you've got to not use certain kinds of paint and, you know, keep that. So we don't know. I mean, that's why we're having this ad hoc subcommittee, because we need to get into that and figure that out. There are also some wonderful little pamphlets and books written by third parties about Fairfax that give a wonderful history and designations of buildings and what they were used for.
Yes, I recently saw a webcast that was presented by individuals in the Fairfax Historical Society. Incredible in terms of what was referred to as the cultural background and the whys of certain buildings and the ones that burned down and were rebuilt and the businesses that they I just in the, I don't know what it was, half an hour, I got such a better sense of, you know, why certain buildings are where they are today. And you know, why Fairfax is what it is today. I would certainly recommend you know, everybody to link into that. And this is from somebody who grew up here, so you know, you're right, Phil. There's just a wealth of resources, and this is the time to tap into those and bring them into the discussion and inform what we do next, and provide the basis for the recommendations on these objective standards. I mean, that's the thing, is we look around town and we see these very attractive buildings with certain styles and sizes and features. And we can use those architectural elements to really guide where we end up with our objective standards.
I just would like to clarify that people are throwing around the word designation, and it's not a simple thing to designate a state or federal historic property. It takes a long time, it's very expensive, the research required is costly, and quite often the owners aren't willing to abide by the restrictions set on them. And so designation should not be our goal, but rather there are different levels of historic determinations or designations that are not necessarily the National Register of Historic Places. And those cultural elements that you have all talked about, as well as the social fabric of Fairfax that includes customs and structures and design elements that can be respected and used as development standards without having to designate something on the National Register. There are different levels of designations that can be used as historically significant or architecturally significant or eligible for designation without having to be designated. So there's a good amount of leeway there, and the National Register should not necessarily be our goal.
No, but there are reasons why you can designate buildings for like density bonus exemptions and things like that that we might want to look at. for many reasons. So yeah, I mean, or we can go to eClampus Vitus and see if they want to help us designate our buildings. And there's a lot of ways to do this. I don't think we can designate things as historical necessarily that would then throw an owner into this deep pit of regulatory morass. I think we can't do that. So I don't think that's an
They
issue.
wouldn't agree to it.
Yeah, if they agree to it, then and they know what they're getting into and they have informed consent, fine. But we can get around that another way, and we'll discuss that in the subcommittee. So I guess to summarize, it seems to me we have few people, and we're all concerned, and Mimi has a question.
Do we want to reach out ourselves, or are you asking, Ben, are you thinking of asking people that might be interested in working with Norma and Phil to reach out to staff?
I think
All
we
of the
should
above.
wait and have a first review of what they've got and where we're at before
If-
we go any further.
I would welcome feedback from your commission, and indeed any community members who might be up at this later hour or watching this webcast or hear about this to contact staff because we don't know who all the resources. I know we've lost at least one individual who was a huge figure in the historical community in Fairfax recently, but yeah, so if you want to provide some suggestions, we would be very happy to follow up on that.
Okay, so there's no motion to make here or anything. Any other comments, or we could move on to our final aspect of the minutes?
I
Esther?
just have a question about, Ben, you mentioned a resource, a local resource. You said it was like a 30-minute, was it a video or book article that talked a lot about the history of, why things are the way they are in Fairfax. Can you send that link to us or that resource?
Yes, it was a presentation at the library by the Fairfax Historical Society, and it was Fred Cadoni and one other individual. I'll have to dig for it, but I'll look it up and send it to your commission.
Thank you. I'd love to see that too.
The entire ad hoc subcommittee could probably benefit by that. I mean, not to mention any other participants in this process. So are we good on this aspect, guys? Any other?
Are we good? I need to take a quick break. Is that okay? Oh, I need to take a break, so I'm going to take it.
It's okay. Let's mute our cameras perhaps, or whatever we have to do that.
So I guess we're taking like a 5-minute break.
Let's keep it to 5 minutes, and then we can move on to the minutes. Thank you. Okay, we are returning. Okay, we're getting here. Amy, is that a real background or a virtual background?
It's a virtual background. They have like, if you download the app, which I did on my iPad, they have some default virtual apps, like you're on the surface of the earth and you're looking at space, or like a magnified leaf. But then you can also upload your own things. So of course, I decided to upload one of my doodles behind myself. And then I tried all these different doodles, and I decided the one with the radiating aura, presents me in the best light.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Okay, are we all back? Ready to go? So then we're now moving on to the minutes. Do any commissioners have any corrections or edits? I was actually absent for that meeting, so I don't have any. Commissioner Swift?
Just one top of paragraph on page 5. It has AUDs, and I believe it should be ADUs. That's all I had.
That's a German ADU, the AUDs. Okay, very good. Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Newton.
At the top of page 3, at the end of the paragraph starting Commissioner Newton asked, the last sentence says, Commissioner Newton stated she was also concerned about poor water pressure. And I just would like to add the qualifier for fire suppression purposes.
Okay, I think we have excellent minutes. I'm looking at the minutes. I was absent, but I mean, you could really get a great picture of the meeting from these minutes, and I congratulate whoever is doing them. Any other comments? Okay, Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber.
Yes, 2 corrections on page 2 at the very bottom. The last sentence says Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber had a question about the provision regarding the rescue window component for fire. Parentheses, the proposed code indicates windows must be 6 feet above finished floor. Parentheses, I'd like to add to that, when facing neighboring property, how could this be reconciled with bedroom window requirements. So that's one. Then actually on the following page, oh no, yes, page 3, I think it continues on. It says, she stated the public right-of-way is usually a lot wider than the actual roadway. I'd like to finish that off by saying, and questioned whether new off-street parking could be designated by the fire department in the public right-of-way that is not paved. So that's, not sure how that could be corrected later, but just trying to, say that fire might designate or identify off-street parking in the public right-of-way.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the minutes? None? Okay, hearing none then.
Oh, wait, one more.
One more, okay.
The thing that I really appreciate about going through the minutes, in addition to how well and they're written and comprehensive, is that they provide a reminder about some of the things that we were looking forward to, at the next meeting. And so I guess I'm going to ask you, Phil, maybe before the meeting agenda is finalized, if you can just check in with Ben and Linda on following up to things that are referenced in the minutes is something we're going to discuss at a following meeting. Just an idea. Thanks.
Do you have any particular such items you want to point out in these minutes? Mimi?
Well, no, I don't really want to go through it all, but I think, you can look at just an example. On page 3, there was a reference to the transit occupancy tanks, and Director Berto stated this will be a topic of discussion at the March meeting. And I know we have a lot of other things going on, so I'm not criticizing for us not having that agendized. I just want to make sure that the commission and staff are keeping track of things, and especially since we review these minutes every month, it just is a really good opportunity for us to make sure that things aren't falling off the table.
Totally, and the TOC is one of them. I don't know when we can get that on the agenda again, but it is something we need to do because it may discourage the use of short-term rentals, but that's part of our goal in the inclusionary housing aspect of us. So, we don't want to have too many short-term rentals here. TOC is not only a way to regulate that, it's also a way to collect some more tax and for the town. So I would like to get that on the agenda at some point in the very near future. So as we go to commissioner comments, that's going to be one of them. That's thank you, Mimi, because that is a topic that I need to shake loose in my mind and get out there again.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I know that it was the intention of the town manager to do a staff report and make a presentation at this meeting. Obviously, the exigencies of the situation we're faced with right now resulted in the town council meeting last night. And frankly, things jumping to the forefront that we hadn't even considered would be.
Absolutely. No, I hear you. That's for sure. You're forgiven. At this time, you guys, you're one of the, okay, you and Linda and the staff are all part of the heroes that we're all like screaming about at 8 o'clock. We are loving you, and you keep working, and you're dedicated, and you and the health workers, our fire department, police, everybody, all of our first responders are working their butt off and trying to keep us, and I think succeeding in this county. So we're very lucky.
Well, we appreciate the support. I wouldn't even put myself close to the level of the people that are putting themselves in harm's way daily and have been. And indeed, there have been people who've lost their lives, the healthcare workers. So, but it's been a challenge and a learning experience. And as Commissioner Newton and you pointed out, yes, there are items that don't disappear just because we've got this major dislocation in our normal everyday lives and means of doing business. And I'll be alluding to that briefly in my director's comments.
Well, I'll move to approve the minutes as corrected.
Second.
Ben, you're gonna
Roll
have to
call.
call this.
Roll call vote. Yes, Commissioner,
Want me to do it, Ben?
no, I've got it. Commissioner Newton,
Aye.
Commissioner Swift,
Aye.
Commissioner Fragoso,
Aye.
Commissioner Caroline,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Aye.
and Chair Green.
I'm recusing. I was absent that meeting.
Oh, that's right.
Now we move on to Planning Director's Report. Ben, take it away.
Okay, I'll be pretty brief. Some of this fairly prosaic. Business cards. At least one planning commission member would like to get business cards. I'd sent out a couple of emails. I just would like to get a sense of which commissioners are interested in business cards, if any additional ones are. And we can follow up off the, whatever you call it, outside this meeting.
I wouldn't mind
Okay.
a few, not, I don't need hundreds of them.
Right. Okay. Very good. That's two. Anybody else interested?
No, I guess that, 50 would be plenty. I don't even know what I'd use them for.
Well, I will say this. Sometimes when you're visiting a site, as a person, I find that, sometimes people get surprised. All of a sudden you're there knocking on the door or they're on their property and you walk up to them, and it's always good to icebreaker to say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and you hand them a card. I guess in the big picture, people can print bogus cards, but I've always felt like it's a useful icebreaker with people. But
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Millennials don't like them anymore, apparently, but I think they're valuable. And if you're talking to someone and you want to present yourself, it's a good idea. I encourage all of you to get a set.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. When you start, snooping around somebody's site, you might want to present one of these and say, okay, not casing your house.
Right.
Well, you are, but not for the purposes they're concerned about.
Well,
Also, it enables, I'm sorry, Ben, it enables us to use our exchange email, right? So that we don't have to give everybody our private email when we're running across commission business.
Right, and I need to get that reset up somehow. I don't know what happened to my exchange email.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be closing the loop with some of the commissioners on the type, which email address they want to use. Okay, very good. I see 4 commissioners that have indicated an interest, and I will follow up with you about what contact information you want. Let's see.
I do get the exchange, by the way. And it is kind of nice because it does separate your emails, because I know we all get a couple hundred a day, right? And so having the exchange where I don't have to sort through and pull out the Fairfax emails is helpful, only we go back and forth a lot about, is it on the exchange or is it our private email? So if we could clarify one thing, because like today I was looking for the invite in my private email, but it came through in the exchange, and then later I got it on my private email, but I wasn't looking, anyway.
Well, Cindy has a solution for you there too, is to have your email program to send it all into one box. But I'm sorry, but the planning director's report, I don't think was finished before we all started.
No, thank you. There was also something, the fire subcommittee, and again, this was something that, for good and sufficient reason, as a direct outgrowth of the discussion on accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, and the concerns that those raised with the latest round of state legislation, basically doing away with a lot of assumptions we have heretofore had about what's necessary to have a safe living environment, particularly for evacuation. I did reach out to the fire chief, Chief Weber, and as we know, Marin passed the bond measure. So there will be tremendous resources made available in this county for the type of long-term planning that frankly is desperately needed in Marin to avoid the type of conflagrations that we've witnessed too many times in the state. Being as that may, these are planning type efforts, and we ran into this social distancing, shelter in place, brave new world of digital meetings and things like that. So that's an apology to Commissioner Swift for not being able to follow up with a subcommittee meeting yet. The chief is on board with approaching it on that basis. One of the good things, and I think I reported this to your commission last time, was an evacuation study and that the county had put in for a grant with the state. We know that Marin County in general and Fairfax in particular is one of the most vulnerable communities for evacuation purposes. This is one of the reasons that staff is so concerned about the state waiving their edict and saying, let there be no parking on sites, because you can spend half an hour in Fairfax and realize just how congested it is on our streets. I won't go into a rant tonight, but it is work that we will be following up on. And regardless of the outcome of the state grant, because the local Measure C did pass, we had that confirmation from the chief that an evacuation study would be conducted. And I know Fairfax is going to be prominent among those.
Right.
It's the type of information, frankly, if we're going to battle state headwinds in their effort to increase the housing supply, we're going to need some very hard science and compelling rationales for why we feel that Upper Cascade may not be appropriate for triplexes or higher density with no parking, or even really triplexes at all. But I digress. So
but Ben, I have a question for you, if I may. I do not have a sense of what's in it for Fairfax with Measure C. At some point, can we get that might come from Cindy, you and your subcommittee work. I don't know what it is that would be available to Fairfax, but obviously an evacuation plan is a good idea. Have any of you seen the video Paradise on Netflix? I highly recommend it if you haven't. It will shake you to the bone, but it's important for everyone to see that.
It was scary.
It was real, wasn't it?
Oof.
Yeah, tunnels of flames. I mean, everybody really get a glass of wine or whatever it is
No way to get out.
that chills you, and watch that video.
well, to your point, Norma, concerning the Measure C, I know there's a lot of stuff that will involve Fairfax, and there's various outreach groups and subcommittees that will be involved in prioritizing where those funds go. I will also say that one of my I called it a haunted house, frankly. I thought it was so scary. It was when you go up to the very top of Live Oak, on the wall property, on the edge of the wall property, not Live Oak, excuse me. What am I thinking of? Ridgeway. and get on that trail. And there, the eucalyptus grove there, it had a brush that was piled up 10 feet tall, and
Wow.
you know, just the definition of fire ladder. And if you go up there now, it's wonderful. They've taken a crew and done a ton of beautiful work. I mean,
Fantastic.
yeah, I can't tell you, as somebody who's very concerned about this, obviously.
And I did see the crews coming through town. I know they concentrated a lot in the Cascade, and rightly so, but I did see them come up through my neighborhood, and they
Yeah.
kind of trimmed at the edge of the roadway. There's that straight line where they cut that tree right there.
Yeah,
All the way
and
around.
this is right. And you know, how do you do tree work, and what trees? You know, at some point, and this will be in conjunction with the tree committee, we may have to start discussing things like, should we really have junipers in Fairfax, knowing what we know about their extreme flammability and the fact that they're non-native, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some of the tough questions.
Yeah.
Will be forthcoming, and Cindy, of course, is the expert on.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be having that meeting and having those discussions and feeding that into our ADU approaches, and maybe making some recommendations to the town council, likely making recommendations to the town council on adjustments to those regulations.
Yeah.
Just to Norma's comment about the clearing through the Deer Park area, that was part of the $1 million Cal Fire grant that Fire Safe Marin had obtained to
Oh,
do
okay.
public right-of-way clearing. So
Yeah,
they did
a
that in
nice
the
job.
Firewise communities in Fairfax and other towns.
Yeah. They did a very nice job.
Good idea. Someone I talked to from Australia described how those eucalyptus will burn, and
Mm.
they experienced a ridiculous situation, months ago. Millions of animals dying. Eucalyptus, it was fault, so you have to be careful. So any further discussion? Planning director's report continuing?
No, I just have an odd question for you guys. I have not been able to find out what happened with Measure D, the San Geronimo. Does anybody know? Can anybody tell me what happened there?
Good question.
I've seen everything, all the results except for that. Nobody knows. Okay, it's
I
not just
thought I
me.
knew, but I would probably be speaking out of place. My understanding was that the control failed. So
Which is good, right? I mean, we're supposed to say no on D.
Well, we don't know. You had to read it. We don't think
Okay,
it's not a.
I'll call the county.
It's a political issue. So is the plan? Are you done?
yes.
Okay. So any other comments on Ben's report, which was excellent? Thank you. Any commissioners have any comments or requests? If not, I would like to say one thing.
Mimi has her hand up.
Well, let me just. Okay, Mimi, go.
No, you can go, Phil. Go ahead.
Okay, just real quick. We are in the throes of this situation. California seems to be one of the states that is ahead of the curve in the COVID-19. And I have noticed, and I request that people who see others without masks in public, people who are riding bikes without masks, all this stuff is unfortunate, but we do need to comply with it. And I think we're seeing some results in California. So I'm hoping that everybody is well. I just want to say that, and I hope everybody can, keep their distance, and, this too will pass. Commissioner Swift.
So I liked Mimi's comments when we reviewed the minutes, because in part that's what I do with those as well. besides looking at the video to kind of remind me of due outs and things we had discussed at the prior meeting. One of the things along those lines that I had jotted down was when you come back to us with some of those due outs, one of the things I think one commissioner had wanted was more information on the scope of the ADU amnesty program. So if you can kind of plug that into that. And then the other item I had was if you had a sense of when we were going to start talking about short-term rentals. Because I know that was one of the things too that the council had requested.
Yeah, I'll check with the town manager. He feels like he has the bandwidth to provide that presentation, hopefully sooner rather than later. Interestingly, I don't know if you've been following the news, but Airbnb and those other firms, there's people, I guess, in this world who bought houses counting on that income to help pay the mortgage, and they, nobody's traveling, and events like the Kentucky Derby are being canceled, and so, the ripples from this coronavirus are worldwide and goes beyond our imagination, and it is including things like Airbnbs.
It's a rough business in good times. Yes, Mimi.
Yeah, just for Norma's benefit, it looks like according to the IJ that Measure D had over 60% no and under 40% yes.
That's great. Thank you. Someone just sent me a text also. That's good, because no meant that it was not required to be a golf course forever, that the community keeps its say in its community plan to do something that benefits the entire community and not just golfers. So I'm very happy.
It's a political question I think we as commissioners should stay out of in our public discourse. However, I think there are probably a number of people that put that measure forward who disagree with you. I wanted to also say thank you to Ben and Linda for orchestrating this, and also acknowledge Tamala Fish, the fabulous and wonderful Tamala Fish, who is not seen on these screens, but working behind the scenes. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Tamala.
Thank
And
you, Mimi.
thank you to the Community Media Center of Marin, because I know they're working during all this. So just thanks to all the people on screen and behind the screen who are making this possible. I really appreciate you guys doing this, so thanks.
I do too, and thank you so much. It was flawless. I mean, this worked really well.
It does work well.
Easier than some physical meetings. I can see all of you at once and not have, right to me and the left to me. So yes, thank you, Mimi. That was a great
Yeah.
comment.
And I would also say that to the members of the community that maybe had some experience of difficulties last night and tonight in participating, we're taking your comments under advisement. For example, the discussion we had throughout this meeting about the delay in comments was as a result of last night's meeting and people noticing that. Fairfax is providing 4 ways for the public to comment and participate in this meeting, which is quite a bit more than most other jurisdictions do. And that's an effort to provide that. We're not perfect. We realize we're still getting the bugs out, notification and just what this all involves. But our commitment is to this community and to try to make this as participatory as possible.
Thank you so much. I think it's a work in progress, but the technology has been pretty fabulous, I must say, tonight. There were no real glitches here at all, so I'm very happy. If there are no other commissioner comments and requests, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
A second?
Second?
Do we need a roll call vote? No. Okay, so all,
Somebody raise your hand
raise your hand. Good idea.
or raise your thumb. Yay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.